Disclaimer, I know you can easily generate a clean architecture Flutter structure with AI, but understanding the fundamentals and how it works is what differentiates a software engineer and a vibe coder, and teaching you the fundamentals is what this video is all about. Hi, my name is Samuel, and I'll be taking you through clean architecture in Flutter in 2026 and how it actually was, basically going through the fundamentals and what Flutter themselves recommend. Personally, I will also take you through what I've used personally for the past 4 years in all the production app and all the client app that I've built over the 4 years, and how I was able to scale the app to 200,000 users over the years. Without further ado, let's get straight in. So majorly, we'll be going through the Flutter documentation as well. So this Flutter documentation and my presentation slide here. So majorly, this is a practical guide on how to use MVVM. MVVM is recommended by Flutter themselves on how to separate, how to have your model view and ViewModel architecture pattern in your Flutter application. So that's what we'll be going through. And the first question you might ask is why clean architecture still matters. I mean, why it still matters in today's world? And I know that most developers now use AI to code, but if you don't understand how it works, it can just get really confusing at the end of the day, and it's a thing to start a project is another thing to complete it or even launch it at all. And when you don't even understand how the project works, then it is not maintainable and it's not easy to actually manage. And that is why we have to talk about clean architecture, so you can guide. Even if you are using AI agent, you can guide the AI agent, and you can as well have the knowledge of how to structure everything right from start, or even why the app is already in production. So why it matters: first of all, adapt to growth. So as Flutter projects grows and team expand, maintaining clean structure prevents code from becoming tangled and unmanageable. As I said earlier, if you have a spaghetti code, it will be very tiring to even manage. It will be very frustrating. I remember joining a team and the code base was a lot. It will be very tiring for a new developer to even come on board and start working on the project, start spending months just to understand the code base when the structure is nowhere defined. I mean, using clean architecture. The number 2 point I have here is easy changes. So separation of concern means UI updates doesn't risk breaking business logic, enabling safer and faster development. So you can easily change stuffs or change features or change functionality without necessarily breaking other features in your application. Other features you can imagine in some apps that an existing feature is working earlier, but probably because they are trying to introduce a new feature, it affects the other existing feature, and that is when we have business logic, that is separation of concern. So it is easy that we have different features for different purposes. We have different logic for different features. If you want to update a particular feature, we go straight to the feature to update it. We don't have to interact with everything on the code base for us to change one thing or the other. And the third point, which is support teamwork. So structured architecture makes onboarding faster and testing simpler, reducing friction as requirements evolves. So majorly, if you are working in a team of, let's say, 5 developers, when you have clean architecture, it will make the team work it effectively, because everybody have it's just like splitting tasks and stuff like that, and that is what support teamwork is. So let's move to the next thing. So the Flutter-Official Direction. So if we go to the Flutter documentation here now, as you can see, so as you can see, the overview of project structure, separation of concern is most important principle to follow when designing your Flutter app. So let us move on. The architecture the Flutter team recommend is MVVM, which is model view and ViewModel architecture pattern. So majorly, so as you can see, the structure here, this is view, the presentation layer, ViewModel, then repository and services. Services is what some tutorials calls data source, but in the Flutter documentation is referred to as services. So you can see repository and services represent the data of an application or the model layer of MVVM. So each of these components is defined in the next section. So we're going through that as well. All right. So as you can see now, I'll just go through the point before we actually go through the practical implementation. We still go through code base and do one or two there. So MVVM pattern. So Flutter recommends using MVVM, as you can see here. So Flutter recommends using MVVM structure your app around views, ViewModel, repository, and services to separate concern effectively. Number 2 is feature-first organization. So your app must be based on features. I mean, feature first. So group your files by feature rather than by type to keep the code base intuitive and scalable as your app grows. So keep your app in feature first code base. That is, you are developing per feature. So you are writing a function per feature. That is, you are building a not application for the authentication. There's a feature folder for it. Everything that has to do with the authentication is in that authentication folder. Everything that has to do with settings is on settings folder and stuff like that. So even the business logic, the functionality, the presentation, the model, the service, the repository is inside that feature. Number 3, which is views. So this widget handles UI rendering and user interaction, passing event to the view model without containing business logic. So this is our presentation layer. Basically what the users are seeing, that is the UI. So the UI should not have any business logic. I mean, any business logic. You making requests to endpoints in your presentation layer is just a bad code base architecture or folder structure and all. So majorly, make sure your view does not have business logic. It should only contain the presentation, what you want to show to the user. What is allowed is basically the views or the UI making requests or just calling the function that is already defined in the business logic folder and this separation of concern. So number 4, which is ViewModels repository and services. So ViewModels manages UI logic and state, repository and data accessing and caching. Services interact directly with external data source like API, REST API, and the likes. So majorly, as you can see now, basically that summarizes everything that the Flutter documentation is talking about here. So that's pretty much it. So the next point that I have now before we go to my code base, so the recommended folder structure. So if you go to the Flutter, as you can see on the diagram, we have the view, the view model, the repository, and the services. That is what the Flutter recommend. Also the UI as well. So from the UI, the application UI part of things, how it works. So that's pretty much it. So if we go to the folder structure now, majorly we have our lib, which is obvious. So instead of our lib now, we have our core folder, which has the dependency injection. Majorly, let's say Riverpod. Riverpod, I believe we should be familiar with Riverpod. So Riverpod, we can use Riverpod annotation as well for code generation. So we have dependency injection. We have network calls, basically utensils like colors and the likes. We have theme, the app theme, and constant, like some constant text or some constant variables whatsoever that you might have in your project. So the next is, after the core folder, we have the features folder. So the features basically is all the features in your application. As you can see, for example now, if we are building a note application, we have the authentication feature, we have the notes feature, we have the tags feature, and we have the profile feature. So inside this our authentication feature now, we have different folder. We have the data. We will go through that when I'm showing you the code base. So but these are like the feature. Then we have the shared. So the shared folder is like the shared widgets, models, and stuff like that, like your app buttons, probably some let's say drop down bottom sheets, custom bottom sheet, and etc. So that's majorly what we are going to have in the shared folder. So the first point which I have here is feature centric organization. So each feature folder groups related presentation data. This basically talking about that each features, like for this authentication folder now, each have their own presentation data and domain code together for better modularities and clarity. So for each feature, they have everything that it needs. We don't need to touch another feature to modify a particular thing. So for each feature, it's just like developing gradually, developing features by feature, so we can fully complete a feature before we even move to another feature. So that's pretty much how it works. So the second point is core and share modules. So common utilities and reusable components are isolated in core and shared folders accessible across features. So that is the shared folder. Then we have maintainability and navigation. Keeping features self-contained reduce scattered file that makes navigation intuitive and scalable, and that is what we have inside our core folder. So majorly we can move to the next point, which is MVVM and dependency rule. So MVVM layer, now we have the view, the view model, and the model majorly, which is view model, and model. So the Flutter component, now view majorly is the widget composition, which majorly means the screens. So render UI pass event to view model. So for view model, river port notifier, convert data expose command. For the model, repository plus services, which is the data source accessing and caching. So that's pretty much it on this structure. So you can go through it, and if you go through the documentation as well, you can see that it's exactly the same thing that we have inside the templates: the view to the view model, then the repository to the service, just like let me go back, just like what we have here. So that's pretty much the same thing that Flutter recommends as well. So now, building a node feature with VVM architecture full layer walkthrough. So now I will go through my code base so we can go through like a well structured clean architecture with MVVM architecture majorly. So this is a node application majorly. This is just like a template. Majorly the UI is nothing, just like a template as I mentioned. So the major thing I want to show you is the folder structure and also the MVVM structure majorly. So as you can see now, inside my lib folder I have the core folder. So the core folder where we have the dependency injection folder, we have the network, we have the team, we have the utilities. So you can see dependency injection, network, team, and utilities. For your team, you can just have your team majorly. Constant, our constant file basically, like as you can see, the app name, the API base URL, if you have some text as well, and etc like that. So that's pretty much it. So that's that for the core. So the next folder, let me just open it so you can just have reference to it, is features. So as you can see inside the features now, we have the authentication, although the major one that I put, like I feed with data, is this note folder. So we use it as an example. So before I go through the note folder, we have the profile as well and the tags. So these are like different features of the application. So majorly, so now let's use the note as the example. So inside the notes now, we have the data. We have the data folder, the domain, and presentation. So data, domain, and presentation. So inside our data folder now, that's where we have our models, our repository, and our services, basically where we are doing all the data caching, fetching, making requests to third-party endpoint and stuff like that. So models, which is like the template of whatsoever you are calling on this particular feature. So we have the repository, like all the features, as you can see. For the repository, watch notes, save notes, delete notes, like basically all the repository, like the functions that is inside this particular feature, which is notes. So that is repository, and we have the services, which is something like this, majorly the making requests to endpoint majorly. Either you are using any third-party API REST API, or you are using Firebase, Superbase, or any other solution, backend as service or whatsoever. So that's pretty much it on it. So and this service as well. So that's service. So majorly inside a data folder, we have the model, we have the repositories, and we have the services folder. Then the next folder inside our note folder is now the domain. So the domain contains the entities, the repositories, and the use cases. So the use cases majorly is like getting like making calls to everything that we might likely use inside these particular features. So that's pretty much on use cases. And the entities as well, the notes, the template, the blueprint of what will be what you'll be reading inside these particular features. So as you can see, we have like the blueprint or the structure of our notes feature, which contains ID, title, content, and created at. Pretty much does it. And the repository, which is notes repository, which is listening to the entity, which is this notes. Pretty much it. So that's that on our domain. So this is our domain, and for our presentation, majorly the UI. So this is the screen, not screen. This is where we have the screen. As you can see, the screen majorly is just fetching the data. No simple as ABC, no complicated function being called on the presentation layer. It's just loading the data. It will show the unloading, to show load progress indicator. When there's error, it will print the error to the user. If there's data, then it presents data. As simple as possible. All the function, all the business logic basically is inside our domain, our data folder majorly. So that is that. So we have the view model as well. So for the not view model, so this is where we have different segments. Like inside the notes obviously have different like widget or different structure, and that is the view model here. So we can go through like the functionality to save note, to delete note, to probably fetch note as well. So that is this view model, which is using code generator as well. All the dependencies are added already. So these are the dependency used. Flutter river pod for the state management, river pod annotation, HTTP for HTTP request, JSON annotation, and for the dev dependency river pod generator for code generation. That's what we used here to generate this code. And sorry, let me go back. Build run obviously and JSON serializable. So that's pretty much what we need inside this our view model, so we can work with what we have already created inside the data layer. So that's pretty much it. For widgets, if you have any custom widgets for these particular features, remember that the widget is not actually compulsory, but if you have like a primary widget that you want to reuse inside this feature, so instead of putting it inside the general shared what's it called folder, you can just put it inside the widgets for this particular feature, so it won't confuse like what is being used, so we can know that okay, this widget is specific for this particular feature. So if you have a widget for that particular feature, then you can create a widget folder for it. But if you have general widget all through, then just move them to this shared folder. So that's pretty much on this folder structure. As you can see, this is how feature first organization work. That is, you work based on features. All the functionality you are performing is based on feature, and that is what Flutter recommends as well. So you work based on feature, and you manage your app as in progressive way. So that's pretty much it. So now let's move to the next point, which is service and repository layer. I already explained that, but just go through it. So services layer and repository layer. So as we see here, this is repository and this is services. So services layer, services communicate directly with external data sources like REST APIs or local storage like shared preferences, IF, ISA, and so on and so forth, providing raw data without maintaining state. So majorly, they are just providing the data. So that's what services is. So basically fetching data from third party or from local storage, then submitting it majorly. They are not managing the state, they are just providing the data. So repository layer combines multiple services, handle caching and error management, and offer a stable unified source of truth for the app. So majorly the repository folder is where all the business logic is. So majorly everything that has to do with app, where you can monitor the state of the app, that's what we have inside repository layer. So everything, all the source, the state management, the handling, caching, and offering a stable unified source of truth for the app, that is what we have inside the repository folder, and that is why we have this implementation where we implement all the function that we have here. So that's pretty much it on this. So the next point is view model and view layers. So view model responsibility transform transform repository data into UI states and exposes commands for user action, manages business logic and state without UI rendering repository. So what this majorly is that it manages the UI states and exposes commands for UI action. For example, in a normal application, our user clicks on a button, so whatsoever the bot on top of the button supposed to respond to, that is what ViewModel manages. So majorly all the interaction based on the user interactions. So that is like on press of a button. Let's see inside this note screen now, if you have a button here. Okay, as you can see, we have on press. So this on press now calls save note command. So saving this note now, that is the function of ViewModel. So it manages business logic state without UI rendering responsibility. So the UI does not is not responsible for that. Is majorly just being called, because on press of it, the button has, on press of the button, it has to fire it has to trigger a particular function, and that is what it's does. So majorly, so the view responsibility, render widget based on UI state and execute command from ViewModel, contain display logic only, no business logic inside widgets. Just like we have here, there's no business logic whatsoever. What we just have here is a UI presentation to the users. So we just fetch what has been called already. Everything inside this function is already managed for us inside our data folder, inside the repository, and the services is already managed. Even the states, if there's error, if there's anything whatsoever, it's already managed inside the presentation layer. We are just fetching based on what is being returned. So if there's an error, as you can see here, if on loading, when the state is still loading, it should show this. When there's an error, it should show this. So that's what the presentation is basically just showing the user what they need to see based on what is happening. So basically the current app state, that is the view responsibility. So the next thing is domain use cases. So optional, not default, just like this domain that we have here. So this is it. This is domain. So the domain use cases, these are the use cases that we have here. This is actually optional. Sometimes it's not needed if you don't want to engineer your app. Mind you, some of this stuff are not needed if you're just building a small application and you already know like the all features you want to build. You can you are still building in feature based projects, but like these domain use cases, some of it are not necessary. You can easily manage it inside the domain folder and all. But if you are building a larger application, then you have to split everything as mentioned there. So combine multiple repository, add use cases when logic needs to be matched to match data from several repository. And the second point, which is handle complex logic, use the domain layer only if the business logic is intricate enough to justify separation of clarity and use. Third point, which is avoid overuse. Excessive use cases increase boilerplate and cognitive load without delivering real benefits, and that is it. So use it as much as possible, but don't overuse it. Instead of increasing boilerplate or cognitive load without just giving you what is actually needed. So that is when it comes to domain. So if I go through the Flutter documentation, let me see data accessing and use cases. Okay, so another consideration. Okay, this is domain layer. So when adding a domain layer, whether ViewModel will continue to have access to repository data directly, or if we enforce ViewModel to go through use cases to get their data. So that is the use cases that we have here. So this basically just it's just like when you are doing a live coding and they give you like some use cases of how the results should be like. So these are just use cases that we are expecting from the data. So that's pretty much it. So put another way, will you add use cases as you need them? Perhaps when you notice a repeated logic in your ViewModel, or will you create a use case time in ViewModel data even if the logic, this is just a question, but majorly what they are trying to say is that the use cases is primarily optional, but if you have some repeated function instead of making it boilerplate code, then you can make use of use cases. So you can see, as you can see now, inside the view model, we have the logic layer, which is the use cases, the use case, sorry, before it gets to the repository, and that is exactly what is here. So the use cases for this particular feature. So that's pretty much it on this. So now the next point I have here is the common mistake to avoid. I think it's actually mentioned here as well. So yeah, some of this layer. Okay, if you suspect your application will benefit from this additional layer, consider the pros and cons. So some of the mistakes you should avoid while moving forward. I've seen some projects that over-engineer some application. I mean, the code base, trying to juggle everything that they learn, probably via tutorials or whatsoever, or just trying to bombard the whole system with every engineering tools they could put their hand on. And that's sometimes what AI does. It's just trying to get everything you could find on the internet and just add it to the code base. But if you're not knowledgeable in that area, you just accept it and whatsoever. If it works, fine, and if it does not work, fine. If it works in a few days and after a few weeks it shuts down and stuff like that. And these are the common mistakes to avoid. So logic inside widgets, never put your logic. This is one of the first things that as a Flutter developer you need to know. Never put your logic inside the presentation widget. So business logic belong in ViewModel, not widget. Keep widgets focused on display only. Let your widgets just be focused on display. Let them just display whatever that needs to be displayed to the user. The second point is overusing use cases. Don't overkill. That is, add use cases only when needed to avoid unnecessary boilerplate and complexity. So when it's not needed, when you're not building something complex, or when what your actual that particular feature does not need any use case or does not require any, there's no need, so as to avoid unnecessary complexity and over engineering. That's pretty much on it. I believe it's mentioned here as well in the use cases. I think, yeah, the use cases as well. So it is optional according to what Flutter themselves said here. So if we go through this, you can see the whole concept about use cases and all. So the third point is keeping services. Always use services to wrap data source. This keep repository testable and modular. So majorly, like your services folder, your service folder majorly is where you do all the third-party integration, like API, local base, fetching of data majorly. So that's pretty much on it. So you have to always use your service to wrap data source. That is where you are fetching the data from. So you have to make use of your services to do that. So ignoring the fourth point, which is ignoring dependency injection. So use dependency injection to inject services, repositories, and ViewModel clearly and safely. And that is where that's what we have Riverpod for. So with Riverpod annotation, we can easily do dependency injection. Probably in my other video, I will talk about dependency injection, or in the future whenever. So that's pretty much it on it. So the next point, majorly start small and keep it practical. Majorly, all this further structure is just for you to have the understanding of it. You don't necessarily need to start like this and to have all the folder. As you are looking at the folder, it might be overwhelming at first. But if you don't need some of this folder, I mean, if your like this shared folder now for widgets, if you don't have any extra widget for this specific feature, you don't need to have widgets folder. You can just keep it all inside this shared folder, as simple as that. So that's pretty much it. And for example, this use cases is not necessary if you don't have, if you are not performing any complex tasks or complex mutation or whatsoever. So that's pretty much on that. So start small, keep it practical, refactor one screen at a time, and begin with your next new feature. So start with one feature, and that is why it is feature based application, because I can just say I'm focusing on authentication, and on the authentication I can build everything around it and make it work as perfect as possible. And that is how big teams and projects that want to scale in the nearest future works as well. So you have to take one feature at a time, complete the feature before moving to another feature, and so on and so forth. And that's pretty much on clean architecture and Flutter. So just giving a summary and next step that you can take. So core architecture rules and practical application. So view displays, I mean the views, just like the English sounds. Views, basically what you're saying is it display UI, ViewModel manage logic, repository provide the source of truth, and services handles external data system. Again, views is the presentation layer, which is the UI. ViewModel manages logic, like all the functionality, the state and whatsoever of the app. Repository provide the source of truth. If the source, I mean, if the data is correct, if there's any if there's any issue whatsoever and the current state of the application, that's what the repository is for. And the services handle external data system, or your endpoint core, or your third-party integration, or your backend services integration, and etc. That's what the services for that is for. So this clear separation promotes maintainability and testability. Majorly, it is easy to maintain with this, so you can easily spot where all your services are. So you can, if there's something wrong with services code base, you can easily go there and modify as necessary, and so on and so forth. And the practical application is use domain use cases only when truly needed. Again, I have seen a lot of developers trying to, I don't know, probably once they learn something, they want to use everything. It's good if you're just testing out how it works and trying to understand it. But when you're building a real project, use only what is needed. Don't overcomplicate things. Just use what is needed. And in this case, domain use cases only when it's truly needed. Start applying this architecture feature by feature to keep your project organized and scalable. So probably you have a project that you are currently building and the code base is already looking spaghetti, and you think of like redoing it. Instead of starting the whole project from scratch, you can take it feature by feature and start building from there, start restructuring from there. And that is how it works majorly. So that's pretty much on this note. I believe you have learned one or two. And if you want these templates, you can just drop a comment. I read all comments majorly. You can just drop a comment in the comment section below, and I will make sure to reply you with this template. And also I have a newsletter that I post, or I sent out mails every week, once in a week majorly. So if you love to join, it's more of Flutter trends, AI trends, and some other stuff I feel like sharing. So you can just click the link in the description or in the comment section below to join my newsletter program. And I can't wait to have you there. By the way, if you're new to this channel, make sure to like this video and subscribe. Drop an honest comment in the comment section, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. Bye for now.